We are working breaking news now at 6. Just moments ago, a federal judge has ruled on one of former President Trump's appeals to dismiss criminal charges linked to his classified documents case.
Now, Trump and his lawyers today were in federal court in Fort Pierce. They argued that the case should be dropped. CBS's Miami's Joan Murray joins us live outside of the federal courthouse in Fort Pierce with what we have just learned. Joan.
Well, there were two motions today, and a judge that former President Donald Trump appointed to the federal bench has ruled on one of them, and she has denied the motion on that the case should be thrown out because of unconstitutional vagueness. There is a second motion still pending that she has not ruled on, and that is whether the Presidential Records Act could be applied. Trump's lawyers today were arguing that he had the authority to decide which files he could take.
Okay, so this is a story about what happens when the judiciary slowly but relentlessly forces more Trump-related recordings and records into the open, while Trump rages against the judges who are making that transparency happen, creating an explosive collision between a legal system committed to public accountability and a president who desperately wants to control every single aspect of how his words and conduct appear to the American people. Courts across the country have been releasing audio and video of Trump under legal pressure, his criminal case sentencing and deposition footage, and documents the government wanted to keep sealed away from public view, giving the American public rare and completely unfiltered chances to hear and see exactly how Trump behaves when he is not controlling the cameras and the message in the entire presentation. And Trump's response to this judicial transparency has been exactly what you would expect from someone who cannot tolerate any accountability he did not choose, screaming at judges in open court and attacking the entire process as rigged and corrupt and unfair to him personally. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
2021, now this is the 2024.
Connie Trask never misses a chance to show her support. What do you think about the campaign ahead?
I'm so excited for it. So excited for it. America's rallying up. It's the greatest move that ever happened in the United States. Greatest president since Reagan and Lincoln.
In court, Mr. Trump's lawyers argued for dismissing the criminal charges, saying the documents stored at his Mar-a-Lago mansion on Palm Beach were personal. It's an argument resonating with supporters like Patty Link, who drove from Deerfield Beach in Broward.
My father fought in World War II under General Patton, and this is what it's come to.
But prosecutors said the documents in question aren't personal but presidential, dealing with top secret information. Justin Navarro's a supporter we met Super Tuesday.
Let me walk you through what has been happening, because this pattern of courts ordering releases while Trump melts down in response tells you everything you need to know about the ongoing battle between transparency and a president who believes he should never have to answer to anyone, including the judicial system that is supposed to hold him accountable. In New York courts have already released audio of Trump's own criminal case sentencing from January 10, 2025, giving national news outlets clean, unedited recordings of his actual words in a courtroom where he was being sentenced as a convicted felon in a criminal case. The New York State court system posted this audio publicly for anyone to access so that every American could hear exactly what Trump said when he faced the consequences of his criminal conviction, rather than just reading about it in news reports or hearing his carefully crafted spin about what happened on social media afterward. Courts have also released video of Trump's deposition in the E. Jean Carroll civil rape and defamation case, footage from May 2023 that showed Trump answering questions under oath about the serious allegations against him in a legal setting where he could not control the format or the questions or the presentation. This was not Trump at a rally controlling every single aspect of how he appears to his supporters. This was not Trump on a friendly television program where hosts lob softball questions and let him ramble without challenge. This was Trump under genuine legal pressure, being forced to respond to questions he clearly did not want to answer in a format he could not manipulate or spin to his advantage. The public got to see and hear exactly how he behaved in that setting, and it was very different from the confident winner persona he projects when he controls every aspect of the environment around him. In separate federal cases, judges have ordered government agencies to hand over Trump-related records that officials desperately wanted to keep sealed from public view and scrutiny. In October 2024, A federal judge ordered the United States Army to release documents about Trump's controversial visit to Arlington National Cemetery, flatly rejecting government arguments that the records should remain sealed and instead siding with public access and transparency over secrecy. The watchdog organization that sued under the Freedom of Information Act won their case, and another set of Trump-related records was forced into the open over strenuous objections from people who clearly wanted them kept hidden from the American public. And how has Trump responded to all of this judicial transparency? To courts releasing recordings of his own words and ordering documents made public that he would prefer to keep secret? By screaming at judges in open court and attacking the entire legal system as corrupt and rigged against him personally in ways that would get any normal defendant held in contempt and possibly removed from the courtroom. During his New York civil fraud trial, reporters sitting in the courtroom described Trump just yelling at the judge for several minutes while he was supposed to be testifying as a witness, complaining loudly that the case was rigged and ignoring repeated instructions from the judge to simply answer the questions he was being asked rather than use the witness stand as a platform to attack the court and the entire legal process. This was not a defendant respectfully disagreeing with a ruling or registering an objection through proper channels. This was a defendant literally screaming at a judge in a courtroom in a way that would result in immediate serious consequences for any normal person. Coverage from Trump's various New York court proceedings describes a consistent pattern of courtroom disruptions that goes far beyond anything that would be tolerated from a normal defendant in any normal legal case. Trump has interrupted judges repeatedly while they were speaking from the bench, something that would get any other litigant immediately sanctioned or removed. He has called proceedings unfair and rigged while sitting right there in the courtroom where he is supposed to show basic respect for the process and the institution. He has forced judges to threaten sanctions or even physical removal from the courtroom if he continued disrupting the proceedings with his constant outbursts and attacks on the court. The same man who demands absolute respect and deference from everyone around him at all times shows complete and utter contempt for judges and courts whenever they do something he does not like or rule against him in any way. This collision between judicial transparency and Trump's rage at that transparency is intensifying dramatically as more recordings and documents are being forced into the open through ongoing litigation and court orders. Every single time a court orders new materials released, Trump's instinct is to scream at the referee rather than accept that the judicial system has the legitimate authority to make these decisions about transparency and public access. He treats transparency as a personal attack rather than a normal function of the legal system that applies to everyone, including presidents. He treats judges who rule against him as personal enemies rather than neutral arbiters applying the law as they understand it. And he responds to adverse rulings not with appeals through proper legal channels, but with personal attacks and courtroom outbursts that would absolutely get any other defendant in very serious trouble. Alright, so let me walk you through in much more detail the specific instances where courts have ordered Trump-related recordings and records released, and how Trump has responded to judicial proceedings with outbursts and attacks that reveal his fundamental contempt for any institution he cannot personally control. Because understanding both the transparency being forced by courts and the rage it generates from Trump is absolutely essential for grasping the ongoing collision between a president who demands total control and a judicial system committed to accountability and public access, regardless of who is involved. The audio release from Trump's criminal case sentencing on January 10, 2025, was a significant moment of court-ordered transparency that gave the American public direct, completely unfiltered access to Trump's own words at one of the most consequential moments of his entire legal saga. The New York State court system posted this audio publicly and officially, not leaked through back channels or obtained by journalists through unofficial means, but officially released by the court itself for anyone in America to hear whenever they wanted. This was Trump being sentenced as a convicted felon in a criminal case, and the public could listen to exactly what he said in his own voice and with his own tone, rather than relying on secondhand accounts from reporters in the room or his subsequent spin on Truth Social about what supposedly happened. This kind of court-ordered transparency matters enormously because it prevents Trump from controlling the narrative about what happened during these critical legal proceedings. When proceedings are closed to the public or recordings are sealed by court order, Trump can characterize events however he wants, and his supporters have absolutely no way to verify whether his version of events matches what actually happened in the courtroom. But when courts release audio and video recordings, the public can judge for themselves what happened. They can hear Trump's actual words and tone and demeanor rather than his carefully crafted after-the-fact presentation designed to make himself look good. Court-ordered transparency takes the narrative out of Trump's hands and puts it in the public domain where it belongs in a democracy that values accountability. The video released from Trump's deposition in the E. Jean Carroll civil rape and defamation case showed another dimension of Trump under legal pressure that the public very rarely gets to see because Trump works so hard to control every aspect of how he appears. The deposition footage from May 2023 captured Trump answering questions under oath about the serious allegations that he raped E. Jean Carroll in a department store dressing room in the 1990s. This was absolutely not Trump at a rally where he controls the crowd and the message in every aspect of the presentation. This was not Trump in a friendly interview where hosts let him avoid difficult questions. This was Trump in a formal legal setting, being forced to respond to questions from opposing counsel in a format governed by rules he could not override through sheer force of personality or by attacking the questioner. The public got to see Trump's actual demeanor under pressure and hear his actual answers and judge for themselves how credible he appeared when subjected to real questioning from a skilled lawyer rather than softball interviews on friendly media outlets where he can ramble without challenge. Courts releasing this footage served the important public interest in understanding what happened in these proceedings, and it served the broader democratic interest in accountability by showing that even Donald Trump can be compelled to sit for questioning and answer under oath about his conduct like any other citizen. The October 2024 federal court order requiring the Army to release records about Trump's controversial Arlington National Cemetery visit demonstrated that court order transparency extends well beyond just Trump's criminal and civil cases to broader questions about his conduct and how the government has documented it in official records. A watchdog organization sued under the Freedom of Information Act seeking records about Trump's August visit to Arlington, a visit that generated significant controversy over whether it violated long-standing rules against political activity at military cemeteries that are supposed to remain nonpartisan sacred spaces. The government wanted to keep the records sealed and out of public view, but the federal judge flatly rejected those arguments and ordered the Army to release the documents to the organization that requested them. This kind of ruling matters significantly because it establishes that courts will enforce transparency laws even when the records involve a politically powerful figure like Trump, who clearly does not want them released. FOIA exists specifically to ensure the public can access government records about matters of public concern, and few things are more concerning to the public than questions about whether a president or presidential candidate violated rules during a visit to a sacred site like Arlington, where fallen service members are buried. The court's order put transparency and public access above the government's clear preference for secrecy, exactly as the legal system is supposed to work, regardless of who might be embarrassed by what the documents reveal. Now let us examine in detail how Trump has responded to judicial proceedings generally and to judges who rule against him or try to hold him accountable to the same courtroom rules that apply to every other defendant in America. The pattern that has emerged across multiple cases and multiple judges is one of escalating outbursts and attacks that reveal Trump's fundamental inability to accept any authority he does not personally control, including and especially the authority of judges presiding over legal cases involving him and his conduct. During Trump's New York civil fraud trial, the case brought by Attorney General Letitia James alleging that Trump committed fraud by systematically inflating the value of his assets over many years, reporters sitting in the courtroom witnessed extraordinary scenes of Trump attacking the judge while on the witness stand in ways that would have resulted in immediate contempt findings for any normal defendant. Coverage of the trial described Trump just yelling at the judge for several minutes at a stretch, rather than answering the questions he was being asked as witnesses are required to do. He complained loudly and repeatedly that the case was rigged against him. He attacked the judge and the attorney general as partisan enemies out to get him for political reasons. He ignored repeated explicit instructions from the judge to simply answer the questions put to him rather than deliver speeches attacking the entire proceeding and everyone involved in it. This kind of behavior would be absolutely unacceptable and would result in serious consequences for any normal defendant in any normal legal case anywhere in America. Witnesses are required to answer questions, not use the witness stand as a platform for attacking the judge presiding over the case and the entire legal proceedings. Defendants are expected to show basic respect for courtroom decorum and judicial authority, even if they strongly disagree with the case against them or believe they are being treated unfairly. But Trump apparently believes these fundamental rules of courtroom conduct do not apply to him, that he can yell at judges and attack proceedings as rigged and face no real consequences, because he is Donald Trump and normal rules never apply to Donald Trump in his own mind. Judges in Trump's various New York cases have been forced to threaten sanctions and even physical removal from the courtroom to try to control Trump's disruptive and contemptuous behavior. This is genuinely extraordinary. Courts very rarely have to threaten to remove a defendant from their own legal proceedings because most defendants understand instinctively that attacking the judge is not a winning strategy and will only make their legal situation significantly worse. But Trump either does not understand this basic reality of how courts work, or he simply does not care, because his instinct to attack anyone he perceives as an enemy completely overrides any strategic calculation about what behavior might actually help him in his legal cases. The pattern of disruptive behavior extends across multiple proceedings and multiple judges over an extended period of time. Trump has interrupted judges while they were speaking from the bench, something that would get any other litigant immediately sanctioned or held in contempt. He has made faces and gestures to demonstrate his contempt for proceedings while sitting in the courtroom, where he is supposed to be a respectful participant in the legal process. He has issued public statements attacking judges personally before, during, and after hearings in ways designed to delegitimize them and undermine public confidence in their impartiality. He has suggested repeatedly that judges are corrupt or biased or acting on political motives rather than applying the law fairly. The message Trump sends through all of this behavior is absolutely clear. He does not accept the legitimacy of any judicial proceeding that might hold him accountable, and he will attack anyone involved in such proceedings, regardless of their role or the evidence against him. This courtroom behavior connects directly to the broader threat environment that judges now face when they handle any Trump-related case. As we have discussed extensively in previous videos, judges who rule against Trump receive dramatic spikes in threats against themselves and their families whenever Trump attacks them publicly, by name or by court. Trump's courtroom outbursts and public attacks on judges are not just expressions of personal frustration, they function as signals to his millions of followers that these judges are enemies who deserve whatever harassment and threats come their way. As a result, the screaming and attacking that Trump engages in is part of a broader pattern of systematically delegitimizing the judiciary that has very real and dangerous consequences for the physical safety of judges and the independence of the courts. Okay, so let us break down exactly what this collision between court-ordered transparency and Trump's rage at that transparency means, and why the pattern of recordings being released while Trump screams at judges reveals something fundamental and deeply troubling about his relationship with accountability and the rule of law in America. Point number 1. Courts releasing audio and video of Trump under legal pressure represents a form of transparency that Trump absolutely cannot control and that directly threatens the carefully crafted image he presents to the public through his own media channels and rallies. The sentencing audio and deposition footage and order document releases give the American people unfiltered direct access to Trump's actual words and conduct rather than his spin about what happened. This loss of narrative control is what drives his rage at the judges ordering these releases. Point number 2. Trump's pattern of screaming at judges and attacking court proceedings while sitting right there in the courtroom demonstrates fundamental contempt for judicial authority that would result in immediate serious consequences for any other defendant in America. Normal litigants absolutely cannot yell at judges for minutes at a time or ignore repeated instructions to answer questions or attack proceedings as rigged without facing sanctions or removal from the courtroom. Trump apparently believes these rules simply do not apply to him. Point number 3. Judges have been forced to threaten sanctions and even physical removal from the courtroom to try to control Trump's disruptive behavior, an extraordinary situation that shows just how far his conduct departs from normal defendant behavior and how genuinely challenging it is for courts to maintain order when one party refuses to accept basic courtroom rules and decorum that everyone else follows. Point number 4. The court order releases of Trump-related records extend well beyond just his criminal and civil cases to broader questions about his conduct, including the Arlington Cemetery documents and other matters, establishing clearly that courts will enforce transparency laws even when the records involve politically powerful figures who would strongly prefer that those records remain sealed and hidden from the public. Point number 5. Trump's attacks on judges who order transparency or rule against him function as signals to his millions of followers that these judges are enemies, directly contributing to the dangerous threat environment that judges face and the dramatic spikes in harassment and threats that occur whenever Trump targets a particular judge publicly through his statements and social media posts. Point number 6. The E. Jean Carroll deposition footage showed the American public a side of Trump they very rarely get to see. Trump, under genuine legal pressure, being forced to answer difficult questions in a format he could not control or manipulate. This kind of court-ordered transparency serves the important public interest by showing how Trump actually behaves when subjected to real accountability rather than the friendly interviews he prefers. Point number 7. Trump's rage at judicial transparency reveals just how much he fears losing control over his own narrative and having the public see unfiltered evidence of his actual conduct and statements in legal settings. A confident, innocent person would generally welcome transparency as an opportunity to clear their name. Trump's desperate attacks on judges ordering releases suggest he knows very well that what transparency reveals is damaging to him. Point number 8. The collision between courts forcing transparency and Trump attacking those courts represents a broader fundamental conflict about whether any institution in America can hold Trump accountable for his conduct. His screaming at judges is not just frustration with adverse rulings, it is an assertion that he should not be subject to judicial authority at all and that courts have no legitimate power over him whatsoever. Point number 9. This pattern will almost certainly continue and likely intensify as more Trump-related recordings and documents are forced into the open through ongoing litigation and FOIA requests and other legal mechanisms. Every new release will generate new attacks on judges, and the fundamental conflict between transparency and Trump's rage at accountability will remain unresolved as long as he refuses to accept judicial authority as legitimate. So where does all of this leave the relationship between Trump and the judicial system that keeps forcing transparency he desperately wants to prevent? We have courts across the country releasing audio and video and documents that show Trump's actual conduct under legal pressure in ways he cannot spin or control. We have Trump screaming at judges in courtrooms and attacking them publicly whenever they rule against him or order releases he does not want. We have a consistent pattern of behavior that would result in serious immediate consequences for any normal defendant, but that Trump apparently believes he can engage in without any real repercussions because he is above the rules that apply to everyone else. The fundamental tension here is between a legal system committed to transparency and accountability for everyone, and a president who believes he should be able to control every single aspect of how he is perceived and who treats any institution that challenges that control as an illegitimate enemy to be attacked and delegitimized. Courts will keep ordering releases because that is what courts do in a democracy. They apply transparency laws and make records available and ensure that legal proceedings are documented and accessible to the public who has a right to know what happens in their courts. And Trump will keep raging at judges because that is what Trump does. He attacks anyone who subjects him to accountability he did not choose and cannot control. The recordings being released represent something Trump simply cannot spin or reshape or present on his own terms, no matter how hard he tries. When the public can hear his actual sentencing or watch his actual deposition, testimony, or read documents the government wanted to keep sealed, they can judge for themselves what kind of person Trump is and how he behaves when he is not in charge of every aspect of the presentation. That complete loss of control is what drives Trump's courtroom outbursts and his attacks on judges who order releases. He is not just fighting individual legal cases, he is fighting against the very concept that he can be made accountable to institutions and processes he does not personally control. Every time a court orders new recordings or records released to the public, Trump's instinct is to scream at the referee rather than accept the call and move on. That instinct reveals absolutely everything about his relationship with the rule of law and with the constitutional system that is supposed to constrain presidential power. Courts exist to provide accountability and transparency. Trump exists to resist accountability and transparency at every single turn. The collision between these two forces will continue generating dramatic confrontations for as long as Trump refuses to accept that even presidents are subject to judicial authority and must comply with court orders like everyone else. That is the story of Trump screaming at judges as they order recordings released, and why this pattern of transparency versus rage reveals the fundamental irreconcilable conflict between a president who demands total control over every narrative about himself and a legal system committed to accountability that he simply cannot escape, no matter how loudly he screams or how viciously he attacks the judges doing their jobs. Drop a comment and let me know what you think about all of this. Does court-ordered transparency change how you view Trump and his conduct? Should judges be releasing more recordings and documents to the public? And what does Trump screaming at judges tell you about how he views the rule of law and judicial authority? Hit subscribe because this conflict between Trump and the courts is ongoing and intensifying, and there will be much more to cover as judges keep ordering transparency and Trump keeps raging against accountability he cannot control. See you in the next one.